Speaking of Teresa, some time back, she diligently sought the Lord about what this place was going to be known for, and was told,
Well, a school of prayer, prophecy, and healing.
prayer, was deliverance in there too? Okay. Okay, prayer, prophecy, and healing. So she asked me to speak on prophecy. We've been training in the various areas for quite a while. And the Lord has really let us know that a lot of people are going to be coming in. The national prophets have seen from God. We had people from Bob Jones that actually saw from God back in the 80s, maybe early 90s, that there was going to be a worldwide revival resulting in 1 billion souls saved. Not million, 1 billion. And we had a speaker here not too long ago who was just dividing it out. And what does that look like in North County? And the bottom line is this group will double with new Christians coming in, at least double, maybe triple, if that's just the average. And I think there'll be more going on here in the spirit than in some places. That would be every church would have a doubling or so. And so there's a whole lot of stuff that God is going to be doing. So we're training in those giftings so that we're not overwhelmed and that we can do something that God wants to do. When a person stands before you with that attitude, you get atomic downloads from God. It's kind of like Elijah, stand by, I've got this. And then the word is empowered. So what we come expecting determines what we receive in the prophetic. Christ is very gentle. I'm going to jump to Revelation 3:20. Behold, Christ is speaking, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If you open the door, I will come in and sup with you. He's not a Gestapo God. He doesn't kick the door down. He knocks. He doesn't bang, he knocks. And then what we do determines what we get. And that's a spiritual principle that you can lay into every part of your life. Open the door, you get all kinds of stuff. Close the door, you get what you brought. So, in 1 Corinthians 14:5, Paul writes, I would like for every one of you to speak in tongues, but I would rather have you prophesy. The one who prophesies is greater than the one who speaks in tongues, unless someone interprets, so the church may be edified. I want you all to prophesy. Why? What happens when we prophesy? Deb, are you loaded? What happens when we prophesy? What do we get going on? Anybody?
No, it's for you.
It edifies and builds up the body.
Okay. What else is going on when we prophesy?
Shows your obedience.
Okay. I want to get this on tape.
Reveals God's love.
Okay, what does that feel like?
Gives you a great
God.
Okay. Okay. When we get a glimpse of how God sees each person we're around, our feelings toward that person changes. Sherry already loves Aaron. She's a wonderful person. She already loves her. She got a glimpse into something that God is doing. And right now, I anticipate that your love for her has increased. As of this moment, her love for her has increased. And her feelings toward Sherry have increased because she's been blessed today. That's what Paul wants happening. So in order to get that glimpse of God, of God's heart for each person, what we want to do is be in a spirit where we're bringing what God has for that person. So being in that place, that spirit, what we want to do is, we're instructed, 1 Thessalonians 5:17, to pray continually. That's almost the shortest verse in the Bible. It's got more letters for the same number of words. And we do stuff on our own to know God's heart. Some of those things can include listening prayer. That's where we get with God and talk to God, and he does something strange. He answers. If you know how to do that, do it. If you don't, Michelle Hahn has taught classes on it. She'll gladly meet with you, teach you how to do that. Deborah's taught classes. It's just a real good way to go. And as we intercede for each other, our concern and our love increases for each other. And as you intercede, your intercession will change if you do it continuously. Now, some people, intercession looks like, God bless Joy. I know she has a struggle. She has to live with art. I love them both. That's a joke. But as we go through the process, intercession changes. Lord, I know they're struggling financially. Not them, somebody else. Lord, I know that Billy Bob is struggling, him and his wife. Lord, provide for them. And then as you begin to pray, you can actually get into prophetic intercession, where you start saying, okay, Lord, there's opportunities, and I'm going to prophesy into opportunities for financial growth, for things to happen, not for them to be on the benevolence fund, not to be for them begging for money, but instead opportunities, job increases, training. I prophesy into that. And things change in their life as you prophesy into it, and you let them know you're praying for them. That is a great way to be in an attitude. If you've done that, when you come and a person is presented to you for prophetic prayer, for prophecy up here, then all of a sudden you have something already in the well. The well is primed. You're not pulling from ground zero. Now, if you don't know the people and they come up and you prophesy over somebody you've never met, that won't apply. But to your group, to your whole group, the people you're always around, they can be some of the hardest people to prophesy because you know too much. And so when you have that well that you've been digging and the bucket has something in it, you're primed. Now in Romans 12:6, Paul writes, prophesy according to your measure of faith. What does that mean? You're up. What does that mean? Okay, Susan, what does that mean?
I was writing something down. What was the question?
Prophesy according, up there, to your measure of faith. What does that mean?
To speak to what God's given us.
Okay. What else? Okay, Paul writes in mysteries.
I was just thinking, your faith can grow. Everyone is given a measure of faith, the measure of faith. Everyone's given the same measure to begin with, but then our faith can grow, so you become more confident in your prophesying. And so...
Confidence in what your God is giving you. That's your measure of faith. And I'll get into that later. Now, in 1 Corinthians 14:3, Paul writes, but the one who prophesies speaks to people for their strengthening, encouraging, and comfort. Strengthening. I want to build you up. I want you to go out strengthened to meet whatever comes. If the enemy has launched a attack against you in a particular area, you want to know about it so you can prepare for that. Did you just get that today? Okay. You know where the attack's coming from. That's so much easier than being blindsided. Encouraging. We speak in encouragement to people. You're doing great. God says you're blessed. God says you're growing. A process of growing to us when we're going through that process usually is not noticeable, especially over a day-by-day basis. When you look back a year, you say, oh, hey, I've grown. Wow, wonder how that happened. Well, you grow by putting one foot in front of the other and climbing the mountain and overcoming battles. And comfort. You're going through a hard time. God is with you. He's strengthening you. God says, look at Psalms and encourage in the Psalms, and you'll find it soothing for the period of time you're going in. Words like that will come forth. What it doesn't say is correction. And that is a different office than moving in the gift of the Spirit. Oh, okay, another rabbit trail. First time I went to the House of Glory. Special meeting, prophetic house, special person in from outside, never been there before, and that was 30 years ago, so not exposed a lot to the prophecy. I'd had prophecies and given prophecies in the 70s, but not like we're having today. God opened a new door and poured out a new infilling that we all move in prophecy now. But I go in and they're prophesying over everybody. Again, I sit down, I see all this going on, and I'm thinking, God, I don't want a prophecy. I don't know if I trust these people. I don't know if they're going to... The idea of prophecy back in those days especially, in many circles, was to rip your heart out and see if you can make it to the car before you bleed out. So, God, I'm not really interested. So the person, it was Sharon Stone, not the actress, she prophesied for about 45 minutes of individual prophecy. And I was listening to it, thought, okay, they're encouraging. They're about what you're growing into. They're, okay, Lord, I think I'd like to receive a prophecy. And so immediately it's like, you, stand up. And I received a prophecy that night. Now, it may not have been fun. She said, one of the things I remember is she said, you've always been taught, you go near the stove, you get burned. And God has said, not only you're near the stove, you're in the frying pan, and I'm calling you out into the fire. Okay, I don't know what that means. Yeah, it sounds like something I'm going to put on kind of on the shelf until I get a little bit more understanding. Yeah, because the back burner with it off, I hope, before I have to run to safety. But this is a person in the office of the prophet. But it wasn't that. What we begin to see is the love of God. That's what prophecy is all about. Those that bring correction, Ephesians 4:11 through 12. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, pastors, and teachers. Okay, this is a special calling. There's a special training. There is a lot of humbling involved to get there. And it's to equip for the works of service, for the body to be built up. Matthew 23, 8 through 11. The disciples approached Christ and called him Rabbi. And he said, you are not to be called Rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. And do not call anyone on earth Father, for you have one Father who sits in heaven. Nor are you to be called instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be your servant. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. For those who are truly walking in the fivefold ministry, they don't publish cards that say, call Apostle John for your miracle. They do not want to be called Prophet Anna everywhere they go and introduced as Prophet Anna. They are servants. If they're in that, they have been humbled by God before they're empowered. And this is a process. Many will be announced by God, I have called you a prophet, or I have called you an apostle. And so immediately think, I'm someone special. And all of those who walk in that pride will be humbled. And so they've gone through a process where they've been kicked to the curb repeatedly. And they're humbled before God. And they realize that without God, I am nothing. And that I have no status. I have a calling that I am to perform by God because he has given me love to serve the people in my calling. So it is an awesome thing to aspire to. It's a terrible thing to print business cards for. Okay, now we want to be prophesying, and we want to do a good job. Maureen, body, soul, and spirit. What is the spirit all about?
The spirit is the part of us that when we're reborn gets totally redeemed and restored and just becomes one with the Lord. That's our spirit.
What's our soul?
Our soul now needs to get on board. The soul is our mind, our will, our emotions, imaginations, and the more we look into the Word, look into the Spirit, it becomes transformed. It's like the worship today. It is well with my soul. Singing, it is well with my mind, my will, my emotions. We're all on board.
Okay. Thank you. So, I call Sherry up here, and I don't let her pick who I'm going to have her prophesy over. I pick out somebody. As they're walking up, Sherry is studying them. Oh no, what am I going to say? Oh no, I have nothing. God, why did you let Jim do this? God, why did you kill Jim? God, make Jim do it. So I'm looking the person over. What are they wearing? Is there anything that just jumps out? Is there anything, any place I can start my prophetic word from? What are you prophesying from?
Oh, in that case, yeah, from your head,
From your mind, the soul. Is God obligated to stamp anything you say out of your soul? No. But we have the mind of Christ. It helps if you access it. Every thought I have is not from the mind of Christ. Otherwise, I couldn't be tempted. The thought that Christ had, turn these stones into bread while he's in the great temptation. Christ didn't have the mind of Christ at that moment. He did as soon as he responded, no. And he plugged in, but a voice came and told him, here, jump off this temple and everybody will see how great you are. No. That's not what God says. So he steps in the mind of Christ. For us, while we're prophesying, we want to be in that place where we have the mind of Christ. There are things that we can have that kind of, I've seen this a lot, and everybody will experience this. So if you have experienced it, don't look back as a great failure. It's a learning experience. But I've had prophecies where somebody has an agenda. Your theology doesn't line up with mine. Or I think you ought to be doing something different. Now, the logical way is to come and talk to me about it. But the problem with that is I say no and do what I normally do, and they don't get their way. So let me put it in a prophetic word, and then you got to do it because God said it, not me. That's out of the soul. Another place, and this is real common, that people can get caught up, is prophesying from emotion. You're in a meeting. Things are happening. I'm caught up. I know what the person that I'm prophesying over is struggling with. And I speak and I say, God is going to deal with that. that's still from the soul. It's from a place of sympathy, but God doesn't deal with us all the time from sympathy. Occasionally he may, but usually no. So being caught up in the emotion of something and putting that into prophetic word doesn't make it from the heart of God. Instead, there comes a place where we want to hear with the Spirit and have it spirit to spirit, so we can give a word that is spirit to spirit, and that can be rubber stamped by God. If it's from our emotions, from our mind, from agendas, from anything like that, God doesn't stamp it. So it's not really a prophetic word. It may come true. God may do it anyway, but not because we announce God's will, because we didn't. It might just happen to align with God's will. So we want to be in that place where we're receiving. And that, for me, for example, I'm going to start with you. Stand up. Before you got the word for, face them people, before you got the word for Aaron, what did you hear?
Well, first I saw.
Okay. What
I
did you
saw
see?
the wheel.
Okay.
And
Is that all you had at first?
then God downloaded more during worship. And then once I got going, the mind was out and the spirit just, I mean, I can't even remember everything that I said to her except for starting out with the will.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. So many times you have to prophesy with a measure of faith because you don't get enough to know anything. So I wouldn't have been surprised if she just had got the wheel and then started with the wheel. I've got in the past, I've got as little as one word. So you give the one word and just trust that God has something to say, and you want to be in a state where you're not emotionally invested in what God is saying. It doesn't reflect on you. It can be hard, especially if you're new in something. I want to be seen as being prophetic. I want to be seen as having some ability. So it's up to me to give a very good word. No, it's not. It's up to me to be available and to be able to walk up. I mean, Teresa's done this to me a few times. We have a speaker. You come up, you prophesy. Okay, I have 15 steps to get a word of God from God and deliver it. But you want your spirit in a place of being peaceful. In the Old Testament, Elisha, it was Elisha, not Elijah. He was the king, King Ahab called King Jehoshaphat and got an alliance with another nation to attack some people. And so he gets the group together. They go out, they go into the desert. There's no water anywhere. The horses aren't taking this. The troops are mad. Everybody's ready to revolt. And Jehoshaphat says to Ahab, "Are there any prophets here?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I brought all my prophets." He said, "I don't care about them. They're prophets of Baal. I'm not going to do any good." He's like, "Give me a real prophet." And Ahab is saying, "Well, God brought us out here to die. They're going to kill us. We're doomed. We don't have any water, and their troops are going to kill us." And he's like, Jehoshaphat's like, "Okay, get me a prophet of God." So they drag out Elisha Now, I didn't know he was in the military, but I guess apparently he was because he was on the battlefield with everybody else. So he comes and he announces to Ahab, he says, if it wasn't for Jehoshaphat, I wouldn't tell you nothing. But he's here and God likes him. So, do you have a harpist? And they brought in somebody to play the harp. Now, it may have taken an hour or two of him feeling the soothing music and getting his spirit quelled. And then he had the word. And the word was, water's going to just appear in the desert. It's going to be all over the place. You're going to have plenty. And then you're going to defeat the enemies. So the enemy gets up, sees the sun against all the water that there wasn't there before. And they say, oh, 3 armies, they killed each other. Let's go get the plunder. So they charge into there and they find out that they're running into battle, not collecting plunder. The key is, even Elisha had to have his spirit peaceful before he could receive from God. And then he got that atomic message. Now, when we're prophesying, you got to know that sometimes what you prophesy is not going to come true. Kind of painful to realize. So let's put up a hypothetical scenario. Let's get, I don't know, Barnaby. We'll call him Barnaby. You have a word for him. God has called you to be a medical missionary. You are going to go forth. You are going to impact the areas. You are going to heal people as a doctor, but as a healing evangelist. People in this third world state are going to come to the Lord because of the anointing of your life. You're going to be great in the eyes of God. Barnaby replies, rad, man. He goes surfing for the next 2 years, becomes an expert at Grand Theft Auto, and spends his time really developing his talents. Why is that prophecy not going to be fulfilled? Because the person you prophesy over doesn't do the work. Now let's prophesy over Barnaby from the soul. Okay, I see you. You remind me of Dr. Kevin so much. I mean, your mannerisms, your looks, you look like Dr. Kevin. So you are going to be a medical missionary. You are going to do great things for the Lord. Barnaby says, I don't like school, so I'm not going to school for the next 10 years in order to become a doctor. I don't like blood, so I'm not going to do, even if I went, I'm not going to do the work. I'm not going to go in Africa and eat bugs and sleep in the dirt without AC. The result, God doesn't know me. God doesn't care what I want. I want to be a mechanic. I don't want to go sleep in the desert. God doesn't love me. God's requirements are too high. I really don't want to pursue God. So from the soul, we have alienated Barnaby from the work of God by speaking to him from that soul. So, now, Barnaby's hypothetical. We don't have to get together an intercession group. We don't have to raise the spirit from the dead. We just realize that what we're doing has impact. And I'm saying this not to raise the standard as you're learning to prophesy to a point where you can't get there, but to encourage everybody to want to know God at a level where we can do his calling on our lives in a way that we feel good about what we've done. God made you particular ways. He handed out giftings according to how he made you. So when we are using God's giftings successfully, the kingdom is enhanced and we feel good about it and we feel a part of it. That's the encouragement, to have you lifted up where you enter into your calling and see results. I want you all to prophesy accurately, and we're willing to train for that. I want to see healings here, because this is going to be a place of healing. So I want to see people delivered. I want to see the blind eyes seeing. I want to have the deaf hearing. I want cancer to be chased out of here. I want to see tremendous things, but it only occurs as we step out of the soul into the spirit to release God's power.